Now they know you're not to be played with. They thought you were soft, thought you'd bend every time they pushed, thought your kindness was weakness, your silence was fear. They misread your humility as permission to walk over you. But now the mask is off. Now the fire in you has been lit, and the ones who once doubted you are starting to see exactly who they were messing with. You've been through the storm, not just to survive, but to awaken. And now that you've risen, now that you've cut through the noise, they finally understand you're not the one to be played with. You're not the one to test. You've stepped into your power, and the game has changed. You woke up to the game and took your power back. There comes a point in every person's life when the blindfold falls off, when the patterns start to repeat themselves too often to ignore. When you look around and realize, wait a minute, I've been giving my all to people who were just playing with me. And that's when everything changes. That's when the fog lifts and clarity kicks in. You begin to see the truth behind the smiles, the manipulation behind the compliments, and the disrespect behind the silence. You stop brushing off red flags and start recognizing the game. Because it was a game. One where you were the only one playing fair while they were out here moving pieces like it was a strategy to keep you small. But you woke up. You saw the game for what it was, and you chose something radical. You chose you. You see, when you've been underestimated for so long, people start thinking they've got you figured out. They believe you'll always say yes, always make peace, always turn the other cheek. They think you'll never catch on because you're too nice or too forgiving. But that's the mistake they make, confusing your grace for gullibility. The truth is, you were never blind. You were just hoping they'd do better. You saw the flaws, the lies, the manipulation, but you gave them the benefit of the doubt, because that's who you are. But when you finally woke up to how the game was rigged, you did something even more powerful. You stepped out of it entirely. Taking your power back doesn't start with revenge. It starts with remembrance. Remembering who you are, what you deserve, and how far you've come. It's not loud, it's not petty, it's not emotional chaos. It's calm, it's silent, it's that moment when you decide, I'm not doing this anymore. You stop trying to convince people of your worth. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop negotiating with people who are never negotiating in good faith. You stand tall. You reclaim your voice. And most importantly, you redirect your energy back to the one place that always needed it most, your future. Let's be honest, waking up to the game hurts at first. It stings, because you realize how much of yourself you gave to people who were only there to drain you. You look back and see how long you tolerated behavior that you never deserved. But that pain, it's fuel, it's fire. It's the reason your next season is about to be so powerful, because once you wake up, you can never go back. You begin walking different, talking different, thinking different. People notice it too. They sense the shift. You don't react the way you used to. You're not emotionally available for the drama. You're not explaining your piece. That's not arrogance, that's evolution. And let me tell you something, when you take your power back, you don't just change your path, you change your posture. You stop walking like someone seeking approval and start moving like someone who already knows they're chosen. Because you are. And they see it now. Oh, they see it. The same ones who played with you are now left trying to figure out how to reach a version of you that no longer exists. You grew, you elevated, you moved past the games, the gossip, and the gaslighting. You became unbothered, not because you don't care, but because you care too much about your peace to let anyone destroy it. Understand this. People will always test what they think is weak. That's why they kept poking at you, taking advantage of your love, your kindness, your loyalty. But the truth is, you weren't weak. You were mature. You were patient. You were giving people a chance to do right. But when they showed you they weren't serious, you got serious with your boundaries. You learned that love without self-respect is self-destruction. So you stopped begging for change and started becoming the change. You stopped hoping they'd value you and started valuing yourself. That's real growth. That's what it means to wake up and take your power back. And don't be surprised when your strength offends them. Because when people can no longer control you, they try to label you. You'll be called distant, cold, arrogant. But that's all right. Let them talk. You don't need their permission to evolve. You don't need their validation to keep climbing. The ones who truly respect your growth will celebrate it. The rest, let them be uncomfortable. Growth will always offend those who are committed to misunderstanding you. Now look at you, grounded, clear, focused. You're not asking for respect anymore. You command it just by how you carry yourself. You walk in rooms differently. You don't explain your boundaries, you enforce them. You're not seeking revenge because your success is doing that for you. Your healing is loud in the silence. Your absence is echoing in places where your presence was once taken for granted. That's what happens when you wake up. That's what happens when you take your power back. You stop shrinking to fit into people's comfort zones and start expanding into the fullness of who God made you to be. You didn't lose them, they lost you. And now they know it. Now they see it. They know you're not the one to play with because you've outgrown the chaos, outgrown the manipulation, outgrown the cycles. And that glow they see on you, that's what freedom looks like. That's what healing looks like. That's what power looks like. So keep walking forward. Don't look back. The game they tried to play, you've already won by stepping away. You're not here to be played with. You're here to rise. And trust me, they finally got the message. Loud and clear. Respect was demanded, not requested. There comes a time in your journey where asking for respect just doesn't make sense anymore. You've pleaded, explained, reasoned, all to people who heard you but never truly listened. They saw how much you cared, how much you showed up, how much you sacrificed, and they still chose to play you small. That's when something inside you shifted. You stopped begging for respect and started demanding it. Not with words, but with presence, with silence, with standards. Because respect, when it's real, doesn't need to be asked for. It's felt, it's earned. And when they didn't give it to you, you gave it to yourself. You see, people love the version of you they can control. They love the you that makes excuses for their bad behavior, that tolerates the disrespect, that shows up even when you're broken. But the moment you start drawing lines, the moment you say enough, you suddenly become too much. They'll say you've changed, that you're different, that you think you're better. And maybe you are. Maybe you are better, not than them, but better than who you used to be when you let them get away with it. You didn't raise your voice. You raised your standards. You didn't seek revenge. You simply removed access. That's the kind of strength that scares people. The kind they can't manipulate. The kind they can't twist or play. Because they were banking on the old version of you showing up. The one who would always say it's okay, even when it wasn't. But that version of you is gone. Dead and buried. In its place is someone who knows their worth. Someone who doesn't flinch when people leave. Someone who understands that respect is not a luxury, it's a requirement. And let's be clear, demanding respect doesn't mean being aggressive. It doesn't mean walking around angry or bitter. It means you move in peace, but you're not afraid of war when your boundaries are tested. It means you say no without guilt, walk away without fear, and distance yourself without apology. You don't lower your standards just to keep people around. If they can't rise to meet you, they fall behind. That's the price of admission now. That's the new you. Because before, you were too available, too understanding, too forgiving. They mistook your open heart as a welcome mat. They thought because you had compassion, they could walk all over you. But respect isn't about being liked. It's about being valued. And the people who truly value you will never put you in a position where you have to question your worth. They'll show up right. They'll speak to you right. They'll treat you right, not out of fear, but out of genuine honor. And here's the truth. When you start demanding respect, some people will leave. Let them. Respect isn't about keeping everyone in your life. It's about keeping the right ones. It's about clearing space for those who see you, hear you, appreciate you. The ones who don't need to be convinced of your worth. You'll start to see that your circle gets smaller, but your peace gets louder. You'll start to notice that being alone isn't loneliness, it's protect. Because when you stop tolerating nonsense, you make room for substance. You start to operate with a new kind of authority. Not arrogance, authority. You walk into rooms knowing you belong there. You speak with conviction, not because you want to dominate, but because you refuse to be dismissed. People feel that. It makes them adjust. It makes them respect your time, your space, your energy. And the ones who can't handle that, they're just not built for your level of growth. Respect is the currency of healthy relationships. Without it, love can't breathe, trust can't stand, and peace becomes impossible. That's why you stop settling for half efforts and broken promises. You realize that anyone who truly values you will never make you beg for what should be natural. They won't ignore your needs, dismiss your feelings, or undermine your presence. They'll rise to meet your level because they understand your value doesn't diminish just because someone else fails to see it. The shift in you was necessary. It had to happen. Because if you had stayed in that same place, tolerating disrespect for the sake of keeping people comfortable, you would have lost yourself. You would have kept shrinking, kept suppressing, kept breaking under the weight of silence. But now you speak with your actions. You walk in strength. You don't match energy. You protect yours. You don't chase approval. You honor your own. That's the highest form of self-respect. Choosing peace over popularity, healing over history, purpose over people-pleasing. And don't be surprised when they start coming back. When they suddenly realize what they had. When they start trying to reconnect. But here's the thing, when you've upgraded your spirit, not everyone gets a renewed subscription. Access to you is no longer free. It costs effort. It costs honesty. It costs consistency. You're not moved by sweet talk. You're watching patterns. You're not impressed by apologies. You're looking for change because you know now, not everyone who says they love you respects you. And love without respect is just manipulation in disguise. So keep your head high. Keep your standards set. Keep your peace intact. The world may try to dim you, but don't ever shrink for anyone who refuses to rise with you. You're no longer here to be used, abused, or amused by people who lack depth. You're here to walk in purpose, to lead with truth, to live with honor. And the respect you now command, that's the reflection of the power you finally recognized in yourself. They used to test you, used to push you, used to think you'd fold, but not anymore. Now they know you're not to be played with. Because respect is no longer something you ask for with trembling hands, it's something you command with quiet power. You've become the standard. You've become the example. And from this point on, anything less than that is simply not acceptable. You stopped explaining yourself and started walking in purpose. There comes a moment in your life when you get tired. Not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, mentally tired. Tired of over-explaining yourself to people who have already made up their minds about you. Tired of trying to prove your intentions to people committed to misunderstanding you. Tired of watering yourself down just to be accepted by people who couldn't even handle your full truth. And in that moment, something divine awakens inside you. You realize you don't owe them a breakdown of your healing, your growth, or your next move. You don't owe them access to every step of your journey. You don't owe them anything. That's when the shift happens. You stop explaining and start walking. Walking in purpose doesn't require permission. It doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't wait for validation. It's a quiet confidence that says, God put this calling in me, and I'm moving with or without your approval. See, when you're unsure of who you are, you need people to agree with you. You need them to believe in your vision, to clap for your progress, to co-sign your next step. But once you find your footing and purpose, that all fades away. You don't need agreement, you need alignment. You don't chase the spotlight, you chase the assignment. You used to explain why you cut certain people off, why you said no, why you needed space. You used to spend your nights overthinking, trying to craft the perfect words to make others see your heart. But you learned something. People see you through the lens of their own limitations. Some people can only see the version of you that benefits them. They don't see your growth because it makes them uncomfortable. They don't see your boundaries because it exposes their manipulation. They don't see your heart because they were never meant to hold it. And you're done trying to open blind eyes. Walking in purpose doesn't mean everything makes sense to everyone. In fact, it often doesn't. Your purpose will confuse those who've never done the work to find their own. Your discipline will offend the lazy. Your confidence will be mistaken for arrogance. Your peace will be labeled as pride. But you've outgrown the need to explain that. Because when God gives you a vision, it's not a conference call. He didn't ask for other people's opinions when he anointed you. He didn't require a group vote when he assigned your path. So why are you seeking permission from people who were never invited into your destiny? You're not arrogant for protecting your peace. You're not selfish for prioritizing your growth. You're not cold for not looking back. You've simply decided to pour into what God planted inside you. And now, instead of responding to every insult, you respond with silence. Instead of defending every decision, you move in strength. Instead of trying to convince people you've changed, you just show them. Not through words, but through results. That's what purpose does. It makes noise without speaking. It speaks volumes without saying a word. People start noticing the glow, the focus, the way your energy has shifted. You're no longer caught up in distractions. You're no longer accessible to the drama. You're no longer explaining why you've changed, because purpose requires isolation before elevation. Sometimes God has to pull you away from the noise so you can hear him clearly. And in that quiet space, you realized the people who truly know your heart never needed an explanation. And the ones who constantly demanded one were never for you anyway. Let's be honest, this new version of you, it's unrecognizable to some. And that's okay. That's the point. You're not here to be who you were. You're here to be who you were called to be. And the ones who loved the unhealed version of you, the one who tolerated too much, apologized too often, and gave too freely, won't always celebrate this healed, focused, elevated version. They miss the old you, not because you were better then, but because they had more access to your weakness. And now that you've built strength, they feel left out. That's not your fault. That's the price of purpose. You used to over-explain why you walked away, why you set boundaries, why you needed to choose yourself. But now your life is the explanation. Your peace speaks louder than your pain ever did. Your silence says more than 1,000 texts ever could. You're no longer in the business of convincing people to see your value. You've learned that people who can't recognize your worth are simply not assigned to your next chapter. Walking in purpose means walking light. No more baggage, no more guilt. No more carrying people who have no intention of growing. You stop trying to save people who were never trying to be saved. You stop trying to drag people into a future they weren't built for. You've learned to love from a distance. You've learned to cheer for people without sacrificing your own journey. And most importantly, you've learned that not everyone can go with you. And that's not a loss, it's alignment. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop explaining and start walking in purpose, the right people start showing up. The ones who see you without needing a paragraph. The ones who support you without needing an update. The ones who walk with you, not out of obligation, but out of divine connection. Because purpose doesn't just attract blessings, it attracts alignment. And alignment is where the magic happens. So no, you're not cold, you're not distant, you're not rude. You're focused. You're chosen. You're walking in purpose. You finally accepted that you don't need to make your healing palatable for others. You don't need to water down your calling to make others feel comfortable. You've spent enough time explaining yourself. Now it's time to express yourself through how you live, how you move, how you show up. Let your results be your response. Let your discipline be your dialogue. Let your peace be your power. They can whisper, they can wonder, they can watch. But what they can't do anymore is distract you. Because once you start walking in purpose, the noise fades. The confusion clears. And the only voice you follow is the one that called you in the first place. That's not ego. That's obedience. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. It's not isolation. That's intentionality. You stopped explaining yourself. And that's the best decision you've ever made. Because now you're no longer walking for them. You're walking for Him. You're walking in vision. You're walking in power. You're walking in truth. And every step you take from this point forward echoes one undeniable fact. You are no longer to be played with. They tried you and got burned. There's a certain kind of silence that speaks louder than any confrontation. It's the silence that comes after you've been pushed too far, disrespected too many times, and tested beyond your limit. They thought they could play with you like you were some harmless, naive soul who wouldn't notice the lies, the manipulation, the shade disguised as love. They thought you'd always stay, always forgive, always shrink to keep the peace. But what they didn't know, or what they chose to ignore, is that there's a fire inside you that doesn't burn to be seen, it burns to purify. And when they played with that fire, they got burned. You weren't born bitter. You were born with a big heart, an open spirit, a generous soul. You gave chances. You extended grace. You gave people the benefit of the doubt, even when the evidence told you not to. But grace without limits is self-destruction. And eventually the very same heart they thought was too soft to fight back became the reason they lost access to you. Because you don't have to scream to show strength. You don't have to seek revenge to prove your power. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, not because you're weak, but because you know your worth. They tried you, and for a while they got away with it. They mistook your patience for passivity. They thought because you stayed silent, you were scared. But no, you were watching. You were learning. You were collecting data in silence. Every time they tested your love, every time they disrespected your boundaries, every time they played in your face like you couldn't see it, you were storing all of it, and when the time was right, you moved. Quietly, strategically, permanently. And that move, that decision to not react but redirect, that's what burned them the most. But you know what they did? They expected a meltdown. They expected drama. They wanted to see you lose it so they could flip the narrative and make you the villain. But when you left calmly, when you distanced yourself without explanation, when you removed your energy and didn't come back, that's when the real damage hit. Because people don't always realize how valuable your presence is until it's gone. They don't understand the light you brought, the love you gave, the loyalty you offered, until they're sitting in the dark, missing what they once took for granted. You became the consequence they never expected. You were the lesson in disguise. They thought they had you figured out, that they could keep playing the same games, pushing the same buttons, and you'd keep showing up the same way. But not this time. This time you rose up. This time you chose yourself. This time you didn't let them gaslight you into questioning your truth. You trusted what your spirit was telling you, that no matter how much you love someone, you can't keep setting yourself on fire to keep their world warm. And don't get it twisted, just because you don't retaliate doesn't mean you didn't feel the pain. You felt every tear, every betrayal, every ounce of disrespect. But you also realized that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every person deserves a response. Sometimes, the greatest form of revenge is elevation, rising so high above the chaos that the people who tried to drag you down can no longer reach you. And that's exactly what you did. You stopped participating in your own pain and started investing in your own power. They thought they could break you. They thought they could diminish your shine. But what they didn't realize is pressure doesn't break real ones. It reveals them. It sharpens them. It builds them. What was meant to destroy you only refined you. What was meant to discourage you only pushed you closer to purpose. What they tried to use against you became the very thing God used to level you up. Because favor isn't fragile. It's forged in fire. And now every scar you carry is a sign that you survived something that was designed to take you out. They talk now. They whisper. They wonder. Because the version of you they see now doesn't match the one they thought they could control. They don't understand how you're still standing, how you're still glowing, still winning, still evolving. But that's the thing about people who operate in manipulation. They never count on your healing. They never plan for your awakening. They never expect the moment when you stop playing small and start walking tall. They can't grasp it because your comeback wasn't loud, it was real. And here's the irony. The same fire they tried to use against you is the same fire that's now consuming them. The guilt, the regret, the realization that they mishandled something sacred. It's not your job to make them feel better. It's not your duty to go back and fix what they broke. You don't owe them closure. You gave them chances. You don't owe them explanations. You gave them grace. You don't owe them anything except your absence. That's your final word. That's your silent response. And that silence, that's the burn they'll never recover from. You've stepped into a new level now, a level where peace is non-negotiable, where your standards are high because your spirit is healed, where you no longer flinch at disrespect because you don't stay close enough to be disrespected. You've learned to protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. You've learned to trust your intuition, to follow the quiet nudges from within, and most importantly, you've learned that not everyone deserves to sit at your table, especially those who once threw stones and smiled in your face. So yes, they tried you. Yes, they underestimated you. Yes, they thought they could play with you and win, but in the end, they played themselves, because the person they once knew no longer exists. And the person you are now, unshakable, unreachable, unbothered, not because you're heartless, but because you've healed. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much about yourself to go back to what broke you. You've evolved beyond explanation, beyond revenge, beyond the need to prove anything. And now, when they look for you, all they'll find is the echo of what they lost, the shadow of what they mishandled, the empty space where your light used to be. And that's what burns the most, because they tried you and they got burned. You're not cold, you're covered. There comes a moment in your healing journey when people start calling you things you know you're not. Cold, distant, hard. They look at the new you and confuse your peace with pride, your silence with arrogance, your boundaries with bitterness. But they don't understand what you had to go through to become this version of yourself. They don't see the nights you cried in silence, the days you doubted your worth, the years you spent being too available, too forgiving, too understanding, only to be taken for granted time and time again. They see your strength now, but they don't know the story behind it. You're not cold, you're covered. Covered in wisdom, covered in discernment, covered in the lessons that taught you not to touch the fire twice. Life didn't make you bitter, it made you aware. You finally realize that being too open in a world full of hidden intentions will drain your soul. So you stopped letting just anyone into your space. You stopped sharing your dreams with people who only wanted to dissect them. You stopped giving second chances to people who never deserved the first. That's not cold, that's called growth. For too long, you were wide open. Your heart, your time, your energy. You gave and gave, hoping people would give back. You showed up for people who wouldn't even text back. You stayed loyal to people who were only loyal to their convenience. But that version of you, the one who used to explain your boundaries, who used to overthink every decision, who used to say yes when your spirit screamed no, that version is gone. You buried them with honor, not hatred. You didn't become heartless. You became selective. And now, because you no longer allow chaos into your life, people say you've changed. Of course you have. Growth requires change. Peace requires change. Self-respect requires change. You don't entertain what drains you. You don't engage with what breaks you. You don't chase what confuses you. Not because you're cold, but because you've been covered by grace, by strength, by clarity. You've learned that not everyone deserves access to your spirit. Some people were only sent to be a lesson, not a lifetime. They miss the old you, the one who tolerated everything and asked for nothing, the one who stayed silent in the face of disrespect, the one who carried other people's burdens while burying your own. But here's the truth. That version of you was never sustainable. That version of you was slowly dying inside. And now that you've stepped into your power, they say you're different. But it's not that you're different. It's that they can no longer benefit from your brokenness. When you're covered, your presence changes. You walk with intention. You move with purpose. You don't chase anything, not love, not attention, not validation. You know what you bring. You know what you deserve. And if someone can't see that, you let them go in peace, because your worth is no longer up for debate. You're not begging to be seen anymore. You're not proving your heart to people who refuse to handle it with care. You're simply being. And that bothers people who thrived on your confusion. You're not cold. You just don't argue anymore. You don't chase people down for closure. You don't explain your healing to those who never took time to understand your pain. You've learned that peace doesn't come from other people's understanding. It comes from your own alignment. And in that alignment, you found something unshakable. Self-respect. That's your power now. That's your armor. That's what keeps you covered even in the midst of chaos. And it's not that you don't feel anymore. It's that you don't react the way you used to. You've mastered the art of protecting your peace without apologizing for it. You don't give energy to arguments. You don't defend what doesn't need defending. You let people misunderstand you because their confusion isn't your assignment. You've learned to outgrow the urge to prove a point. Silence has become your strongest language, and distance has become your greatest boundary. Let them talk. Let them call you cold. Let them spin their stories. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be authentic, and authenticity will always be misread by those who live in pretense. So no, you don't have to open up to every hand that reaches. You don't have to respond to every text, every call, every fake apology. Your healing journey is sacred, and not everyone deserves a front row seat to it. Covered people walk different. They don't retaliate, they release. They don't chase closure, they create peace. They don't fight for spots in people's lives. They trust God's removal. You've entered a season where silence is your superpower and presence is your proof. You no longer argue with people about who you are. You show them through your glow, through your energy, through your elevation. The people who once mishandled you now have to watch from a distance as you thrive without them. That's not cold, that's purpose, that's covering. You're not who you used to be, and that's something to celebrate, not defend. You've gone through enough to know that your peace is too expensive to be compromised. You've been lied to, betrayed, abandoned, and disrespected, but you didn't become like them. You became better. You chose healing over hate. You chose growth over grudges. You chose faith over fear. And now you're walking in a kind of peace that people can't understand because it didn't come from the world. It came from God. So let them mislabel you. Let them misread your strength. Let them misunderstand your distance. What they don't know is that everything you're doing now is protection. Everything you're choosing now is intentional. You're not cold. You're just not for everybody anymore. You're not mean. You're just unavailable to mess. You're not angry. You're just aware. Covered people don't move like everyone else. They don't need revenge. They don't need attention. They just keep rising quietly, faithfully, powerfully. And if that makes you cold in their eyes, so be it. Because as long as you're covered, you're good. As long as you've got your peace, your purpose, and your God, you lack nothing. The opinions of others don't hold weight when you're walking in divine covering. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them miss the old version of you. That version served its purpose. Now you walk in strength. You walk in stillness. You walk in truth. Because no, you're not cold. You're covered.